Hey everyone, this is Tom Salemi of DeviceTalks. Welcome to the final episode of the DeviceTalks weekly podcast in 2021. Yes, we'll be back in 2022. Excited to restart, but very excited for the rest of this holiday season. So I hope you all get some rest as well. But it's been a fantastic year for this podcast and for us here at DeviceTalks. The world continues to have its struggles, and we all hope for less COVID, as you'll hear later on in the program. But I'm really grateful for the support this podcast has had. So thank you, everyone, for your support. We're pouring the energy of this podcast into our in-person meetings. You can find out details about that on DeviceTalks.com. We'll start registration for DeviceTalks Boston in Minnesota in a couple of weeks. So next year, go to DeviceTalks.com and check out the program updates. I think you'll be excited, and I think you'll see some familiar names. So in our wrap-up conversation, we brought in the entire editorial staff to identify their top stories of 2021. We each got to pick one, and we ran through it. We were joined by Chris Newmarker, of course, executive editor, by Danielle Kirsh, senior editor, by Sean Whooley, associate editor, and Brian Buntz, our pharma editor. So we brought in the entire team. We assembled the news team to give our top stories of 2021. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this conversation, which was sponsored by our friends at KNF. So once again, we will not be putting out a podcast the next 2 weeks. We'll be back the first Friday in 2022. And from all of us at DeviceTalks to all of you, please enjoy some time, the holidays, enjoy your families. And we look forward to rejoining with you in the new year. Let's go. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Good to be here, man. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. I'm feeling like George Bailey at the end of It's a Wonderful Life because the whole town is here. We have the whole mass device MDO drug discovery town. They're here to bring us things.
Hello, you old savings alone. Hello, Brian Buntz. Hello.
Sean Whooley has emptied his expense account. He's dumping a jar of money into our laps. It's quite special. It's a good time to be. I had realized watching that this year that the remake would be less exciting because I think Mary would just start a GoFundMe page and that would be a lot less dramatic. She'd be like, like, hey, we got our total, yay! There'd be no singing, no nog. So
yeah, the 6-year-old daughter already understands the internet and did a GoFundMe campaign.
That's right. Maybe Zuzu got
Dad, raised all the money.
Way to go, Zuzu!
We don't need no angel.
Good point, Chris Newmarker. So no, we're all here not to collect dollar bills, but to collect wisdom of the year 2022.
Yeah, you don't need to give any money to the Tom Salemi Self-Betterment Fund.
No, that is the costs are too high for that fund. Believe me, we are got a lot of betterment necessary. Yeah. But we're going to ask each of our esteemed colleagues to supply us with their news of the year. It doesn't need to be an impactful piece of news. It can be their favorite article. It'll be a favorite profile. It can be anything of the like that they just, when they think of 2021, that's the first story they sort of think of. So we have not yet assigned the order of these top stories. So for that, I have stolen this high piece of technology from my son's Yahtzee game. I will roll dice. Danielle is number one. Brian Bunt, Danielle Kirsh, senior editor at Mass Device, is number one. Hi, Danielle. We haven't said hello to you yet.
Hey, I'm here.
And I'm not sure if Sean Whooley has chimed in yet, but Sean, make sure people know
Danielle,
you're here.
Kirsh, senior editor. Hey, Sean Whooley, associate editor.
I am here, and I've apparently had my expense account volunteered to be dumped into the bank. So
there you go. All right. Yes, that's right.
Feeling generous today.
I meant Dower's expense account. I went around anyway. We don't need to go into It's a Wonderful Life again. So Danielle, you're number one. Brian's number two. Sean is number three. Chris is number four. I'm number five. Number six is a do-over. Let's see who goes first. Number five, me. Yes. I could show you all. See, there it is, number five, although there's no way you would have known that I didn't flip it.
So what story for this year?
My story for this year, the one I thought of when I thought of 2021, and it's one we talked about a bit, but still I find it remarkable that Vicarious Surgical was able to go public via a SPAC. company that we had on the podcast in, I think it was June 2020. And at the time just seemed to be a smallish startup with big dreams, is now valued at over $1.2 billion and is now trading on the New York Stock Exchange. I just think it was a great sign for medtech exiting wise. The fact that companies that small can grow that quickly, and just made for an interesting perspective on surgical robotics, where we all sort of had written it off, or at least given the win to Intuitive, and of course Medtronic's coming in with Hugo. We thought all the big companies would take over, and we've got these smaller companies that are carving a niche for themselves. And actually led to a conversation I had with a VC, where I was basically asking, like, what do you find compelling about surgical robotics? And in our conversation, she made a comparison to basically desktop versus or large room full computer versus desktops. I mean, back in the 70s, people were like, "Oh, you won't need any desktop computer. We all have all the big computers I need." No one, was famously said by Ken Olsen, no one's going to need a computer on their desk. Well, we may need a surgical robotic system that can someday fit on a desk. We may need smaller versions of what we have, and that might be the opening for companies like Vicarious. So I think Vicarious Surgical's SPAC is definitely the one I'll be thinking of a few years down the road.
Well, and overall, the SPACs themselves are a huge story this year. I mean, the fact that last year we had the Butterfly Network, which had this handheld ultrasound, doing a SPAC, and at that point, I mean, I'll just admit it, last year I didn't even know what a SPAC deal was. I was like, what kind of deal is this? I'm not like a financial wizard, and I looked this up, and it's now we're seeing them all over the place in medtech and a host of other industries. It's really become this kind of like financial. We'll see, whether people in the long run decide this was a good or a bad thing, but it's definitely become a financial tool for a lot of these companies to go public.
I thought it said financial wizard on your LinkedIn profile. No,
I should add that. That sounds good. Financial wizard. Sounds.
Yes. All right. So that's my pick, Vicarious Surgical's SPAC. Let us find our next victim. I'm going to roll the dice again. We'll keep 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 being Danielle, 2 Brian, 3 Sean, 4 Chris Newmarker, 5, 6 rollover. Going to do it again. 5, 6 rollover. Number 4, Chris Newmarker.
Okay. Well, another really big story in medtech this year was the supply chain problems, and our managing editor Jim Hammeran for MDO is on parental leave right now. Congrats, Jim. He actually had some really good articles, and not just the fact that the pandemic has caused all kinds of supply chain problems for device companies, but kind of rolling it forward and saying the climate change is probably going to cause supply chain problems for a conceivable time to come. But I mean, it says something that it's really been having an effect on the industry. I mean, just we had Philips had a giant huge recall of respiratory devices, and competitor ResMed theoretically should have been able to step in and grab a lot of market share out of it. And they had their CEO saying, supply chain problems, we can't meet all the demand we're getting, because of the Philips recall. And we heard about supply chain problems too, and J&J kind of stretched out the timeline for its Atava surgical robots that they'd like to roll out. So I mean, sometimes I think that supply chains might be the CEO equivalent of the dog ate my homework. However, I mean, it's definitely a problem, and we're going to see companies trying to figure things out around for some time to come. I mean, actually just today, I 2 articles I posted at MDO. I had an article about a medical device company buying a supplier, just buying an injection molding maker because they wanted to secure their supply chain better. Which and at the same time, I had an article about Formlabs saying that the number of 3D printers they sold to health providers during the pandemic quadrupled. I mean, not the number they sold. I mean, the number of hospitals and health providers that are their customers quadrupled during the pandemic. Those hospitals bringing in 3D printers to make stuff on site. So, I mean, times are changing.
Absolutely. No, that was an interesting integration. And you mentioned ResMed. I know Mick Farrell had posted on LinkedIn last week or the week before, basically calling for medical devices to be a priority customer for chips. We don't need more cars. We don't need more this or more that. We always need medical devices. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in 2022, I think it's my understanding that the chip shortage could begin to resolve itself then, but I'm not really taking anything for granted anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, the chip shortage was caused by all kinds of different freak events, but that seems to be happening a lot lately.
Sure does.
Well, the other thing about the supply chain is that the old model of supply chain was primarily based on lean. So the philosophy was you try to save money by having less things to ship or what have you. And then you have a natural disaster, you have COVID, and that all kind of takes a nosedive. So it seems like a lot of supply chain companies have to kind of evolve and develop a new paradigm that's more nimble, that rethinks how to stock stuff in factories and warehouses. So it's a big kind of learning curve there.
Absolutely. No, for sure.
Yeah, totally.
All right, we're back with our top stories. We've got the entire editorial team here, minus Jim Hammerand, who's out on well-deserved parental leave, as Chris Newmarker pointed out. So we're down to 3 now. We're going to roll the dice. And Danielle, you'll be 1 and 2. Brian Buntz, you'll be 3 and 4. Sean Whooley, you'll be 5 and 6. We had our guaranteed a winner in this roll. Everyone can hear the Yahtzee die roll. Number 3, Brian Buntz.
My selection is FDA's approval of the Pfizer BioNtech vaccine. Would you like to hear why?
Yes, we very much would, Brian.
Why was that important, Brian?
I don't really remember that happening. Was that?
Why was it important having a vaccine against COVID?
So there's 6 reasons I pick for that. So first one is the first COVID-19 vaccine to be approved in the US. Still the only one to have official FDA approval. Number 2 is the first mRNA vaccine to be approved by FDA. Number 3, it's the most popular COVID-19 vaccine in the US and in many parts of the world.
Wow.
4, Pfizer and BioNtech, as well as Moderna and other companies, role in developing mRNA vaccines help catalyze interest in mRNA therapeutics by years, maybe even decades. So the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine also helped change the dynamics of mRNA research. So before the pandemic, you had mRNA-based companies, but they're mainly focused on novel indications, kind of like white space, not so much focus on infectious disease. COVID-19 happened, that all changed. As the first FDA-approved mRNA vaccine, the platform that Pfizer and others helped develop will inspire scores of other mRNA vaccines for viruses, cancer, potentially like heart indications. It's a big, long list of potential things, so we'll see what shakes out, but odds are we'll see a lot more than just vaccines in the future. Also, the interest in mRNA could play a role in fueling research and related platforms like cell and gene therapy. It should be noted that the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine is itself not a gene therapy product, but it's a related kind of technology. 5, it highlighted, so the approval highlighted a new model of collaboration between the industry. So you have like a big name, big pharma company, and then a startup coming together, sharing profits 50-50. It's kind of a unique model there. Then finally, number 6, it's the first to find use as a booster. And recently the company announced that 3 doses of the vaccine appear to be effective against Omicron. So that's it.
I mean, here's one thought I have. I mean, you look at like really big crises in history. I mean, usually wars, but I mean crises as well. I mean, by the end of World War II, we were splitting the atom, and we had rockets and jet engines, and is mRNA going to be kind of the thing that we were like, yeah, that pandemic was horrible, but this is like the advance technologically that we got out of it. I mean, how much do you think this could be like our big leap forward in a way?
I think it's too soon to say. So last week, Moderna announced flu vaccine results. Like they have a few different candidates in the works, but the first early interim results they announced were positive, but they were not really much better than like a pre-existing flu shot. So for that one, the early data suggests it's on par, like not like a game changer, but you have research underway on like of course, infectious disease, but also autoimmune disease, rare disorders, oncology, regenerative medicine, cardiovascular, metabolic disease, and CNS disorders. So you have all these different things. So my bet is that some of them will shake out, but who knows how long it'll take, and who knows which indications will really lead.
At least it's kind of neat that something that just had basically some startup companies like try to get something going in some areas that now, as we hopefully get out of the pandemic, we could have some really exciting healthcare therapies and vaccines, coming hopefully, over the next decade that could really help people's lives. Like fingers crossed.
And it seems like also just like the nimbleness of the technology could help us next time we have a pandemic, or if we continue to have the same pandemic for some time, we can edit the platform. We can make new versions for variants. I think Pfizer and Moderna are both working on Omicron-specific versions of their vaccine, should they need them.
Yeah, that could be really welcome. They could just reprogram for future variants. And
they're planning on having those ready by, I want to say, like March of next year or so. So like matter of months.
2 months before, we have Device Talks Boston, May 10th and 11th in Boston, which wouldn't be possible without a vaccine. So I think, speaking as an events organizer, I agree with you, Brian Buntz.
What if we did come to Device Talks Boston, get a free Omicron shot?
We're going to call it the Omicron shot? Is that in the hotel bar?
Yeah, that's right. Free happy hour with Omicron shots on the side.
That's a great choice, Brian Buntz. That's pretty much a gimme. So good choice and
really
well presented.
Cool.
Okay, so we're down to our two best, I'm sure. Danielle, Kirsh, you will be 1 to 3. Sean Whooley, you'll be 4, 5, and 6. Rolling the Yahtzee die. It's a 3. Danielle, Kirsh, bring us your top story of 2021.
So I did an article earlier this year about how Abbott engineered a catheter-delivered device for premature babies, the Piccolo.
Cool.
It was personally one of my favorites because I know a lot of pediatric RNs, and they've told me a lot about how they have to, like surgeons have to engineer adult devices to fit into kids. And, most of the time it's not indicated for a child. So I thought this story was interesting. And then we've also, just this week I covered some electrophysiology devices for pediatrics that recently won some innovation awards. But I just think we're going to see a lot of innovation in pediatrics soon. There's going to be a pediatric device renaissance happening. So that's what I'm going to be looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, that's a great point. And you would think with the advances in miniaturization, both technically, electronically, but also just in manufacturing, that would allow for a lot of advancement in pediatric implants and tools as well. So that's a great point.
Right.
Yeah, Danielle, I just got to say the prediction about the Renaissance, I hope that's true because, they're definitely, I've heard the same thing. There's just a dearth of really high quality, innovative pediatric devices. So just be great that kids can get more attention.
And the Piccolo is just, like I said, that was one of my favorite things that I've covered this year because it's the size of a small pea and it fits into the heart of a premature baby. So I just can't fathom something that small going into such a small patient population and vulnerable patient population at that. So
great choice. I to your point, you got me thinking, Danielle. I can't imagine working at Abbott and holding one of these little things in your hand as you're sending it, just developing that and knowing where it's going. It's going to be a very impactful way to spend your day. So very great choice. All right. Well, I don't need my Yahtzee die anymore, Sean Whooley. You're the big winner. You're the big number one. Thousands of people have waited to hear this through this entire boring podcast to hear your choice of news of the year of 2021. What's your selection?
My selection is earlier this year, I interviewed Dexcom CEO Kevin Sayer. And it became, as I've sort of shifted a little focus to drug delivery this year, and diabetes is a massive part of that, it became one of the biggest stories that our readers are still reading, pretty consistently 5 months later. And it was just an interview about the company, their next generation G7 continuous glucose monitor, and kind of what's next. And it's clear that they're excited, and it's really interesting to see kind of what everyone is looking for in diabetes management. It's a smaller, wearable sensor. And then, over the course of this year, there's been even more news where Insulet's got their new wearable insulin pump. Medtronic's got next generation pump technology. Senseonics, Eversense has new next gen technology, and all of it's kind of coming to a head where we're kind of expecting it all to come in as early as months, at some point in 2022, it seems like, for a lot of this technology, including Dexcoms. And that's definitely exciting for the future of diabetes monitoring and management.
And Sean, I've kind of had the sense a lot of the new stuff that's coming out, it's as you said, it's kind of like more miniaturized, it's more user friendly. It could how much could this just like shift, the way that, people with, diabetes have to, manage their disease?
It seems like the whole idea is to make it as almost as if you're not wearing it. Like you notice it as little as possible. It's clear that that's sort of the aim they're going for, particularly with Dexcom and Insulet, which are two companies that I've had the fortune of talking to and learning about their technology. And yeah, it's definitely, it's kind of like what Tom was talking about earlier with the computer to the desktop. Like they just want to keep, making it easier and easier and easier to manage diabetes and live with it, and along the way creating some pretty interesting technology.
Yeah, that's really cool. It just feels like next year could be a year where we really see a leap forward and, what's available in that space. It's very cool.
Great choice. I know you spoke with Shacey Petrovic of Insulet. I did on the podcast as well, and she'll actually be a keynote at DeviceTalks Boston in May. And I think it was her who shared the information that someone managing their diabetes has to make upwards of 200 to 300 decisions per day, just about what they eat, when to increase that, when to decrease that, when to move, when not to move. And it's just such an important development to be able to give them tools to focus on living regular lives as opposed to managing their disease. So important year for diabetes. Great choice. All right. And we're back and we're wrapping up this season of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. This is the final episode of 2021, but we will be back in 2022 and we'll all be on social media. So please reach out to us there. You can find us in various spots. We'll work our way down the line to get our information. Danielle, Kirsh, how can folks find you on social media?
I'm on Twitter at Danielle_Kirsh, KIRSH, and the same name on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. And Brian Buntz?
Find me on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to find, I think.
That's right. You're the only Brian Buntz in Northern California or something, right?
There are actually two.
Wow.
It's really bizarre. But you'll only find one that's a pharma editor, so it narrows it down.
Pick that one, yes. Sean Whooley, where are you at in social media land?
You can find me on LinkedIn. My name is spelled SEANWHOOLEY. And then on Twitter, the same spelling plus WTWH is my handle, Sean Whooley, WTWH. So either or, feel free to follow or connect.
Very cool. Chris Newmarker?
Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker. You can find me on LinkedIn.
Finally.
And Twitter, at Newmarker.
At Newmarker, as in a Newmarker, yes. And I am on Twitter at Medtech Tom. I am on LinkedIn, Tom, SALEMI. And please do find us on social media. Please do connect to us when you share this episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. Please
like, follow, subscribe.
Took the words out of my mouth. Please do follow us and subscribe to Device Talks Weekly Podcast. You not only receive this podcast, but other podcasts like the Intuitive Talks podcast, which we put out on this channel. It's a great way to make sure you don't miss an episode containing some very cool medical device technology. So that is a wrap. Great job. Thanks for appearing on this final episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast for 2021.
Here's to no COVID in 2022.
That's right. Any other New Year's wishes out there? I think we're all agreeing less COVID would be the best.
Less COVID.
Less COVID. People get vaccinated for crying out loud.
Crying out loud.
All right. Well, that is a wrap. Tune in next year. We'll have another great episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast waiting for you. You want to scream something? Are you good?
Less COVID.
Less COVID.